Good morning, grade 8s. We are starting with circumference as our next measurement unit. And you might not have heard the term circumference before because this is the first year we really start to work hard with circles. Circumference is the exact same as perimeter, and you should all know the word perimeter. Perimeter is the distance around the outside of the shape, and that's exactly what circumference is. So that would be your first thing, is to write a little, very small definition on your notes, just to make sure that you're getting the whole idea that it's the distance around the outside of the circle. The outside of a circle. Okay, there you go. Now there's also some other terms that we're going to have to get to know before we can start doing these sort of problems. The first one, there's a line that cuts right through a circle, directly through the middle of the circle, and it is called a diameter. A diameter is a line running through the middle of the circle from end to end, so you'll need to know diameter. There's also something that represents half of a diameter. It's a line that runs from the center point to the outside of a circle, and that's called the radius. So there's two terms that you'll have to make sure you... Alright, so now that we know that the radius is half of a circle and the diameter is the length across the inside of a circle from side to side, and that the whole distance around is diameter, we know those three terms, we can go ahead and start with our formula. And when I say start with your formula, I'm going to keep saying that you always start with the formula. It's the first thing you write down when you know you're doing something, anything to do with circumference. Oh, I'm sorry, we forgot one. We forgot one important piece of information before we can even start. This symbol here, many of you know, is the symbol for pi. Now it's not pie that you eat, but it's a numerical pi. Pi has a value of 3.14. Obviously that 3.14 goes on into infinity. It goes on and on and on. But for our case, we're only ever going to use 3.14. Makes it real simple, nice and tight. Now, here we go. The formula for circumference, C equals pi times d. Now, I like to write it C equals pi d because we do not need that multiplication symbol in front or between those two, because we know when you have two things close side by side like that, a variable and a number or what have you, it means multiplication. So use either, whatever you're most comfortable with, and let's get started. I'll put a couple circles here and we will work on them. Alright guys, so here you go. There's two circles for you. Like I said, the first thing we'll always do is we'll always start with our formula. So right here you go C equals pi d. You fill in what you know. Well, I know pi is 3.14. I'm going to multiply it by the diameter, and that's that line right there, so it's going to be by 10. This one's really easy because we're multiplying by base 10 numbers. There's 1 0, so all you're going to do is move that decimal place right here over one space. So without using a calculator, I can say that that is going to be 31.4. Let's put units of centimeters, and we're done there. This one will be a little bit harder to do. I don't think I can do it in my head, but you have a circle with the diameter of 22 meters. Again, you start with your formula. It only takes seconds to do. C equals pi d. Pi we know is 3.14. Multiply it by the diameter, which is that number there. That's 22. And if I use my calculator, alright, using my calculator, that is 69.08 meters, and we leave it as that. So that's the first part, and I know you're looking at it saying, I can do that. That's no problem. Well, of course you can. It's not very hard at all. Let me just copy that because I might need that circle. But then it's going to get a little bit more difficult, and only difficult in that you have to see what information is given to you and then put... it's not working out very well. I'm trying to place a circle there. There we go. It worked out if I use that. Now, as we said, the diameter is pretty easy when we're using that formula, but what if I only gave you a radius? What if I only gave you a radius of 7 centimeters? Well, when we looked at that today, we made a couple of notes. That we know that a radius is half of a diameter. So in order to figure out what the diameter of that would be, we simply multiply this number by 2. Now your parents might tell you, and they were absolutely right, there is another formula for circumference. It's 2 pi r, 2 times pi times the radius, but I've found in my experience that if we start mixing up the formulas, when you hit area of a circle, which is coming next, 4 or 5 kids in the class always start mixing up those formulas, and it creates massive problems. So I'm going to stick with one formula, c equals pi d, and what we will do is when we are presented with a radius, we will just multiply it by 2, get the new diameter, and then use it. It just saves pain and suffering later on down the line. Next year, go ahead and use the other formula, or stick with my way. One formula is easier to remember than 2. So anyhow, 3.14 times d, remember d is 14 that we just found out, and then you use your calculator to solve that. And when we do, that will be 43.96 centimeters. So we'll do one more just to make sure you have the idea of this concept. Alright, I'll make it meters. Now remember, when you do it, you always start with a formula. Start straight out, c equals pi d. Recognize that there's a radius there. We need a diameter in order to make our formula work, and that's not it. But we know that a radius is half of a diameter, so if we draw a diameter on our little diagram, we know that 2 times 20 is going to be 40. We know 40 will be our diameter. So here we go. We put 3.14 in. We multiply that by 40. And then you simply use your calculator to figure out what that will be. And I forgot to turn the microphone back on when I solved it, but it's multiply that through on the calculator. It's 125.6 meters. So now we have 2 different types of questions that we could get. We could have a circumference where it gives you the diameter and you go straight out and do it, or we could have a circumference question where it gives you the radius. You have to recognize it's a radius and go just a little bit further to use the same formula. And there is one more type of question that I got to show you. That's, if it's going in levels, it is the hardest one. But since we've done so much algebra work and you guys did so very well in algebra, I'm not too concerned. So here's the third type of question you might see today. The third type of question you might see today is where they give you the circumference. I'm going to make a number up here, and I'm going to say it's 214 meters around the outside of this circle. So if you're looking where to start, you start in the same place every time, and that is with your formula. C equals pi times diameter. Now, what you have to do is, just like algebra, you fill in what you know. Well, I know my circumference is 214 meters, so I will put that right there for circumference. I know pi is 3.14. The only thing I don't know right now is the diameter. Now what I'm really going to try to do here is to solve for this diameter right here. In order to solve for it, guys, we remember we got to leave it by itself. We got to get this 3.14 gone. Well, it's multiplying over there. The only way to get rid of multiplication in algebra is to divide it out. You divide both sides by 3.14. That'll leave just d on this side, and I would definitely have to go to calculator to figure out what this one's going to be. And plugging that into my calculator, I see that this one here, oops, no, that's wrong, 1 second, 214 divided by 3.14 equals 68.15. It's a little bit more, but we only take it to 2 decimal places. And you'll see a few of these today, and you'll see them throughout the unit. You will have to work yourself backwards sometimes. So here are the 3 different types of questions you could have. Practice them, and look at this if you have any questions. Look at your notes if you have any questions, and then come see me. Alright, good luck, guys.